everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to ChasingCinema.com. I am your host, Jacob Tiranno, and today I am doing my Week 5 update. I just did my Week 4 update yesterday, so make sure to tune into that. Click that white eye up here. A bunch of links will drop down. You'll be able to find that review. I know it, or that video. I know it is late. Like I said, I missed filming last week, but I am back. I'm filming back-to-back here. But I'm going to get us caught up by talking about all the movies I watched in Week 5. So I started the week with a 2011 film, Goon, which stars Seann William Scott, Alison Pill, and was directed by Michael Dowse. This is a movie that I remember vividly coming out, and I don't think, actually Hollywood Video might have been closed at the time, but I vividly remember the DVD case, and I remember people talking about it. Not a movie that I would expect to like. I mean, I like hockey, but I mean, I'm not a fanatic about it, and Seann William Scott, we know, is always kind of in those really lowbrow comedies, you know, American Pie. He's had a few good here and there, but nothing I've ever actually really remembered him for. But like, oh, that's Seann William Scott's movie, and he's great in it. The only one I can really think of is The Rundown, and even that is just kind of ridiculous. And then when I heard about Goon, I didn't think it was going to be anything different, and I was wrong. Very wrong. I think Seann William Scott's best performance is in Goon. He is so good in this movie because while the movie itself might be silly and about just beating people up, Seann William Scott is like the heart of this movie. I mean, yeah, he's the main character, but I mean, he's this really interesting character that is nice and likable, and even though he could go in there and beat the hell out of somebody, there's this interesting quality about him. He's this kind of person who is really innocent and really has these morals. I really can't even describe it because he's naive at the same time of being kind and having these feelings and like knows what he wants, knows who he wants to be accepted by. But he does things that make you go, he must not be thinking all the way. I mean, there's something special about him. And, you know, his brother's a doctor, his family wants him to do something special, and he's a goon. He's a guy that hockey player. He's a hockey player that is sent in to beat up certain people. And watching him in this movie, I'm just expecting these, you know, him to be really raunchy and make all these jokes. But he's actually just a really interesting character. Definitely a good movie, a movie I'd really recommend. It's not as silly as you expect it to. It has heart, and like I said, I think it's the best performance he's ever given. And I hope he does. I know there's talk about having a Goon sequel, which to me hopefully will be good. But like I said, I think that it's really him being such a well-rounded and likable character that makes this movie. Hope he's able to bring it back, or is able to find more roles like this. This movie was 2011, so in the past 5 years he hasn't, at least to my knowledge. But definitely his best work. The following day, I saw the new Coen's Brother movie. I actually saw this movie twice this week. Obviously, it only counts once. But my review, of course, is posted online. You can click that white eye up here. A bunch of links will drop down my Week 4 update, as well as my review for Hail Caesar. To give you a quick breakdown, I'm lukewarm on this movie. I think there's a lot to like, but there's a lot also that goes for me to say that it's two Coen brothers for me. You know, a lot of people say, this is a Coen Brothers movie. It's for Coen Brothers fans. I like the Coen Brothers. I like their later stuff. I like Fargo. You know what I mean? I love Fargo. I love No Country for Old Men. I love True Grit. But like, I'm not crazy with Big Lebowski. I know. Put the pitchforks and torches down for a second. I've gotten that all week. You know, it depends. You know, it really depends with them. And I sat in this theater with a lot of critics who love the Coen Brothers and still weren't crazy about it. I think the message is muddled. And it is very odd and offbeat, but I know that's what they're known for, and I think a lot of the true fans will enjoy it, or that's what it seems like. At least they are enjoying it. But for me, I think there's a lot of forgetfulness in it, and a lot of things that you can forget about this. I think Josh Brolin's performance is something to really take away. I think it gives all these great actors, Jonah Hill, Scarlett Johansson, Frances McDormand, Channing Tatum, all of these characters that might be really, really fun to play. I think it does a beautiful job of looking back at cinema at that time. But it wasn't a movie that I profoundly loved. You could check out my review for more. The following night, based on my brother Tony's recommendation, Prayer of the Rollerboys, a 1990s film directed by Rick King and starring Patricia Arquette and Corey Haim, which tells the story of this. Okay, so like when I heard about this, I expected to know what it would be about, but I was way off. It's basically about this time where the United States has declined. It's like post, not, I wouldn't say apocalyptic almost, future. And there's this group called the Rollerboys. And it's this, they're like kind of like this head gang, and there's this drug called Mist, and it's about basically Corey Haim, who goes undercover to protect his little brother, and he has to go into the Rollerboys and and feed the cops, or about what's going on with the Mist and things like that. And you find out some of the cops are dirty. Being a kid who grew up on watching the Corey's License to Drive, Lost Boys, so on and so forth, I expected my heart just to be like, oh, it's a Corey Haim movie, I'm in. And, for the most part, it was cool, but definitely dated. And maybe because I didn't watch it while I was growing up, it's just not that great. Movie's really orange. That's the one thing I could take away. It was that movie was just like shot all in orange. Like, it wanted every scene to look like dawn, it was just like Lion King dawn or bright orange. A lot of cheesiness going on here. I mean, the Roller Boys, who when they're all these trench coats, and they come in like a single filed line, and they spread out into a V like birds, and they're just rolling that cheesy. It was okay. Not much to really enjoy here. I wouldn't say bad. I think I'm a little bit more forgiving because it's Corey Haim and it's from a time from when I was growing up, and but yeah, definitely not a movie I would plan on adding to the collection. I would just stick with Lost Boys. Following night, I watched Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, a movie that I keep referring to as PPZ, but I don't think anyone else is. It was directed by Burr Steers and is based off of a novel. Obviously based off somewhat of the Jane Austen novel, but also based off of the remake of the novel that is called Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies. We saw this type of story already surface in cinema under Abraham Lincoln, The Vampire Hunter, which wasn't very good. But, I'm like, all right, this will be the movie that makes things interesting. And a lot of people have already scoffed and laughed at the idea of this movie because they didn't know it's a book. I think they just think that studio execs were just kind of trying to be creative when this is all in a sense kind of an inside joke. At least that's what I thought. And then I went in the theater, and this movie isn't really tongue-in-cheek. The movie doesn't kind of play with this idea. Takes itself pretty serious. And even though the two friends of mine who went with me enjoyed it, who are both critics who enjoyed it, I can't say that I did. I was actually quite bored. I'll tell the story again. I'm sure you guys heard it. You can watch the whole review. Click the white eye, of course. But I'm going to give you this little story. English class, senior year. We had to read Pride and Prejudice, or it might not have been senior year. But high school, I had to read this book, Pride and Prejudice, Jane Austen. And one of our biggest tests were an essay on Pride and Prejudice. And instead of doing what I was asked, I wrote an essay about why we shouldn't have to read Pride and Prejudice. That's right, I'm not a Jane Austen fan. Well, you know what? I can't even say that because I never went on to read more Jane Austen, but I wasn't a fan of Pride and Prejudice. And my teacher, who, was a major influence in my writing and all that stuff, and we still talk to this day, isn't a teacher who would just scorn me. He was creative enough, even though I believe I failed this test. He responded to me with a letter about why we should. And it was like 3 or 4 pages, and then I counter-responded with another pages. And I believe, if he still or doesn't, I'm not sure, he has posted the letters, the sequence of letters on his wall in his new school. So, very, very fun. But, yeah, not a fan of Pride and Prejudice. Not a fan of Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. I think this whole zombie thing is just kind of there. It's thrown in. It doesn't feel like it's been very organized. I think the twist is cheesy, and I didn't really care about any of the characters. I thought it was just kind of annoying. I watched a documentary the following day called I Am Santa Claus. I was going to see legendary hardcore legend wrestler Mick Foley live, and I wanted to watch this documentary because he's a producer on it, and he's actually in it, and it basically tells the story of 5 men who want to be Santa Claus. They dress up like Santa Claus. They attend conventions. They're mall Santa Clauses. They're real bearded professional Santa Clauses. And it's kind of like how it explains how these people really embody Santa Claus. And it's not just a part-time job to them. It's something that they live 24/7. Mick Foley, hardcore legend, Mankind, Cactus Jack, Jude Love, all the same person. If you don't know who that is, Google it. You'll find out. he has a whole room in his house dedicated to Christmas 24/7. You know, there's people who depend on that 3-month job of being Santa Claus or 2-month job. There's people who work in making sprinkler systems but enjoy being Santa on their free time. Some of them are aspiring to be Santa full time, you know, and there's Santa organizations and there's groups and there's meetings and there's controversy because one of the presidents have a controversial sex life. There's another. I think one of the most interesting Santas we meet is a Santa who's a part of the bear community in the gay community, and it's kind of him with his lover who doesn't live with him, and him accepting the fact that him and his lover aren't close, but how he is recognized as what do they call him? A polar bear in this movie, and you learn what that is. And quite I don't know, just a very lighthearted, fun, interesting movie. There's no like really major kind of emotional aspect of it. It's lighthearted, it's fun. There is some interesting stuff though. I mean, I learned a lot, and I didn't know like this was actually a thing. You know, documentaries are really, really educational. I remember watching my first documentary on bronies, which are guys who are in love with the My Little Pony universe. And this is just as fascinating. Just like, oh man, there's a whole, like, there's multiple, like, conventions dedicated to people who want to be Santa. Very fun, very light, really interesting. Go check it out. I Am Santa Claus. Next day, I watched a movie recommended to me by Mr. Josh Bell, a good friend of mine who's been on my show many, many times on this YouTube channel, many, many times, writes for Las Vegas Weekly, I've seen pretty much all the movies that I see in theaters with, and usually me and him don't ever really agree. You can check out his name on our YouTube channel and you'll find all the stuff we disagree on. But he recommended to me It's Such a Beautiful Day, an animated comedy/drama from Don Hertzfeld, and who created a bunch of shorts, and they connected into a feature-length piece. You might find It's Such a Beautiful Day under like 12 or 16 minutes or something, but there's been multiple to kind of connect to make a full-length film. This movie is very odd. It's very out there. It's very heavy, but it's all stick figures. The way it's shot is so interesting and beautiful. I mean, I can't even describe it to you. It's on Netflix. Just go put in It's Such a Beautiful Day and just start watching it and just try to hold on as much as you can. I think a lot of people would call it trippy. It's very weird and very out there. There's a lot of things in there that's like very odd to the mind, and you know, sometimes it's a bit overwhelming. From what I know, this movie did not have use of computers. Like, there was no computers to help put the animation together, which is even more fascinating. But it's basically a movie about life and death and you know, mentality and what's the sanity, and it's about this character named Bill. I'm sorry, and if I said Dan Hertzfeld, Don Hertzfeld, just saying. And it's basically just about his journey, and it's overwhelming at times. Like, sometimes there's a point in the movie, very early actually, where he's watching television and he's watching a boxing match, and all these sounds put together and all the different clips just kind of are overwhelming to the senses, at least to me. And I mean, there's a lot of that in the movie. There's a lot of times where everything's just overwhelming. There's times when a lot of things are quiet and easy to watch, or funny, or silly. And there's stuff that's like really emotional and heavy. Like, I laughed, I cried. I mean, this movie is really one of those very artful. I don't want to call it I don't want to call it I mean, it is abstract. It is different. For someone who watches mainstream stuff only, to go and watch this is going to shock the hell out of you, and you might be like, what the hell am I watching? I think one of the funniest things was a review on Letterboxd. Letterboxd.com is a way you could like kind of track all the films you watch. You could follow me on that as well. Jacob Tiranno, of course. But someone wrote, like, I sat down and tried to watch. I sat down and tried to show my 5 friends this movie. 2 quit after 10 minutes. 1 fell asleep. The other didn't enjoy it, and the other one couldn't stop talking about it. I think that's exactly how a lot of people's reaction is going to be. You're going to be one of those 5. A great movie. I think a beautiful movie. I think a very touching movie, and a very artful film. I'm really interested in seeing more of his, but a lot of his stuff is short, so I know the 365-day movie challenge has to be at least an hour long. This one's only like an hour and 2 minutes, but a movie I'd really recommend. And finally, I watched Spanglish. Yes, I never saw Spanglish, the James L. Brooks film, starring Adam Sandler, Tia Leone, and Paz Vega. So this was a movie that I watched. My girlfriend's recommendation. She's been wanting me to see this. Yeah, a movie that it was nothing like I expected. For some reason in my mind, I thought this was a movie about Adam Sandler falling in love with a Spanish woman and them like having to deal with the language barrier, but I'm dead wrong. This movie is basically about a woman from Mexico and her daughter who have come into this family's life, and who contains an insecure wife, a chef, their kids, and a grandmother who used to be a singer and is an alcoholic. And pretty much it's about this mom who's becoming their maid, and they move. This family goes to a summer house, and she has to bring her daughter in. And it's kind of just about all these different interactions and all these different relationships. My good friend, Mr. Josh Bell, who recommended It's Such a Beautiful Day, hated this movie. Hated this movie. Had a lot of choice words. His review is on my Twitter feed. You can follow it at Jacob Tiranno, at JACOBTIRANN, and of course all that is in the description box. But I cracked up because it was quite a funny review. Not funny in the sense that his review is funny, but what his points were quite interesting. And, you know, he thinks, and he's not alone, where this movie is kind of a lot about white guilt and how, you know, like how the white race and how as far as class works. And he's right. You know, I just didn't see that movie this way. I mean, I could see how he sees it that way. To me, it's a really kind of awkward movie. I think it was good. Like, I think it was worth watching. There's a lot of just stuff that's not necessary in the movie. But I think there is heart to it. I think there's a few really, really great moments. There's this really great scene. The mom, named Flora, who's played with Paz Vega, doesn't speak English. So there's one point in the film where she's yelling at Adam Sandler, but she can't speak English. So her daughter is like mimicking her and yelling at Adam Sandler for her as she's yelling in Spanish and she's translating in English, yelling, and they're doing the same motions. I think it's a great moment. But overall, I think I was a little bit more lighthearted on it. Adam Sandler was good in the movie. I can see why some people hate it. I can see why some people love it. I'm in between. I feel pretty indifferent about it. An all-right movie with a lot of issues. With too much nonsense going on. But I would say worth a watch. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap it up for this week. Make sure to click the eye up here. A bunch of links will fall down. You can see my Week 4 update and all my other reviews. Week 6 is coming up. So make sure to tune into that. That's me it. Make sure to follow all of my reviews down here in the description box below at ChasingCinema.com, or of course follow me on Twitter for my daily updates on the 365-day movie challenge at Jacob Tiranno, at JACOBTIRANNO. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning into this video. My name is Jacob Tiranno, and please continue chasing cinema.